We're going to continue on in a series we've been in the last several weeks. It's called From Rubble to Return. We've been walking through the Old Testament book of Nehemiah. If you've been here, we've covered the first 4 chapters of Nehemiah. Today we're going to roll into Nehemiah chapter 5. So if you have your Bibles or whatever you like to read scripture on, you can turn there right now. We'll be there in just a few moments. But I do want to give us a little bit of recap of where we've been, so we're all operating with the same understanding of what's taking place in Nehemiah. And so Nehemiah is this book that's written by a guy, Nehemiah. Weird, that's cool how that all works, right? And Nehemiah is the cupbearer to the king of Persia. What that essentially means is Nehemiah has got a very good thing going on in his life. He's got a very comfortable, good situation. He's kind of in the king's court. He's one of the king's men. This is a good thing. And early on in the story of Nehemiah, what we see is this guy who's got a comfortable, good life gets word from some of his family, some of his friends, that his hometown, Jerusalem, is essentially in ruins. It's not good. It's at an all-time low. It's decimated. The gates on the city have been broken off. The wall that surrounds Jerusalem, that made Jerusalem strong and powerful, that wall that Brad showed us a couple weeks ago if you were here, that wall has been broken down, and it's bad. The members of the community have been enslaved to foreigners. Things are at an all-time low in his hometown, and it's so much so that men have taken their wives and their children, and they have put them into slave labor to pay off their debt. Like, that's how bad this is. And some of you go, that doesn't sound so bad to me. I'll pay off my debt, right? Hey, kid, you need to get a work ethic. Go do that, pay off my debt. That'll be cool. But this is bad. And Nehemiah gets word of this, and it breaks his heart. And he goes to the king. He's one of the king's men. He goes to the king, goes, King, I got to do something. Like, there's this burden deep in me, King, that I got to go do something about this. And so he goes, can I have a leave of absence, essentially, from my job? Can I take some time, and can I go to Jerusalem, and can I help them? And, King, will you give me some of your resources? Will you back me a little bit so I can go do this thing? And the king's like, cool, go. And so Nehemiah heads for Jerusalem. And that's kind of what we've seen so far in this story. And Nehemiah gets in Jerusalem, and things start to trend up a little bit for Jerusalem. Things start to rebound. They start to get a little bit better. And I was thinking about it this week, and given the option, at least me, I can't speak for you, but given the option of faced with Nehemiah's situation, where it's like, stay in my situation where I'm comfortable, it's lucrative, it's good, I feel okay, or go into this desolate, broken, hopeless community, I'm going to stay right where I am. But what we see is Nehemiah's like, no, I'm going to go. And up until this point in the story, under Nehemiah's leadership, the city has started to rebuild. The city has started to recover. It started to flourish. Things are looking good. They're trending up and to the right. And then today we hit Nehemiah chapter 5. And what we're going to see is in the midst of all this, there's a little bit of an internal breakdown that starts to take place within the walls of Jerusalem. And so we're going to jump into Scripture. We're going to kind of unpack this, the next several verses. So bear with me as we do this, because it's really going to set the foundation for where we're going. So it says this in Nehemiah 5, verses 1 and 2. It says, now there arose a great outcry of the people and their wives against Jerusalem, or against their Jewish brothers. For there were those who said, with our sons and with our daughters we are many, so let us get grain that we may eat and keep alive. Basically what we're seeing here is there's a little bit of a protest of sorts taking place within the walls of Jerusalem. There's these people who have been working with Nehemiah to rebuild the wall, to rebuild the city, and they've hit their breaking point because they're starting to realize, Nehemiah, dude, we don't have any money, we don't have any food, we have our families, and we can't meet our basic needs, Nehemiah. It's cool, we've been doing this thing with you, yeah, go city, go Jerusalem, but Nehemiah, real life is hitting us right now, and this isn't what we signed up for. We can't do this anymore, Nehemiah. And so this protest starts to rise up. And as this protest happens, what you start to see is people chiming in, saying different things like, Nehemiah, check this out. Look at this. And so look what it says in verse 3 and 4. It says, we're mortgaging our fields. These are the guys screaming out. We're mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, our houses to get grain because of the famine. It continues. Others chime in. We borrowed money from the king's tax on our field and our vineyards. Things are bad for Jerusalem. And what's interesting is these people, they've been here before. This, unfortunately, is not new to them. When Nehemiah showed up on the scene, when he walked into Jerusalem, this is what he walked into. And he took his own money, his own resources, his own time, his own energy, his own passion, his own burden, and he helped this city, he helped lead the charge and help the city recover. And now we're essentially seeing they're right back to where they started. The wheels have fallen off the bus. There's no more momentum taking place. And as this protest continues, others yell out, now our flesh, in verse 5, now our flesh is as the flesh of our brothers, our children as their children, yet we are forcing our sons and our daughters to be slaves, and some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but it is not in our power to help it, for other men have our fields and our vineyards. Nehemiah, we are powerless. We have nothing. We don't have anything to leverage anymore. It's all gone. We have no options. And I don't know about you, but I read this story and I go, how does that happen? Like, how do you go from where they were, come up here, and all of a sudden we're right back down to where we started? How's that happen so quickly? How's that happen within a couple of weeks, within a couple of months? These people have gone from a high to a low again. Well, what's happened in there? Like, are they that bad of money managers? Like, are they that crazy? Did they just go live lavishly? What happened here? And it's likely what happened is that these men and these families, they spent so much of their time, so much of their energy, so much of their effort, so much of their everything to rebuild the city, to rebuild the wall, to see the city flourish again, that they started neglecting their fields and their vineyards and their orchards, which also happened to be their livelihood. Basically, they quit doing their job that paid for their family to go do this thing because Nehemiah rallied the troops, and it was good, and now it's not. And these guys are going, Nehemiah, what are we going to do? And then to make matters worse, they tell Nehemiah, and guess what, Nehemiah? The people who are loaning us the money, the people who are trying to take advantage of us right now, they're trying to kick us while we're down, they're our family. They're our friends. They see us in a weak position, and they want to benefit from it. And they say, Nehemiah, this isn't right. And it isn't. These are good people. They were doing a good thing, right? They bound together. The city was doing well. And see, what we see in the first 5 verses in Nehemiah is we see this problem that's uncovered. And it doesn't look good. And as I read this week, I found myself asking the question, what does Nehemiah do next? What do you do in this situation? If you're Nehemiah, what's your response? It says this in verse 6. I was very angry. Right? I was very angry. Okay, I get that. And when I heard their outcry in these words, fair enough, right, Nehemiah? I don't think I was very angry would cover my emotions in the situation. Like, I think the Bible would have had some different words to say about my emotions if I was Nehemiah in this moment. Because can you imagine how irritated, how frustrated, how overwhelmed, how betrayed Nehemiah must have felt in this? And it says this in verse 7. It says, I was angry, and it says, I took counsel with myself. And I read this, I'm like, classic Nehemiah, right? Like, oh, Nehemiah, how'd you respond to like this roller coaster of things taking place in Jerusalem? I was angry, so I sought counsel with myself. Like, that's like, I read that and I go, Nehemiah, you are so dumb. Like, I hate you, matter of fact, Nehemiah, because that is not how people react in these situations. Like, if that's me, I'm going to fly off the handle, right? Like, I'm going to go to these people and go, what are you doing? Like, what have you done? I gave you everything I have. How can you respond this way? And Nehemiah's like, nope. I just paused and took a deep breath. Like, get out of here, dude. Like, how are you that good? If we continue in verse 7, it says, I took counsel with myself. And here, in all of Nehemiah's brilliance, here's his response. I took counsel with myself, and the solution he comes up with is, I brought charges against the nobles and the officials. I said to them, you are extracting interest, each from his brother. Basically, what Nehemiah does is he gets all the power brokers of Jerusalem together, and he gets them all in the same room, and he starts talking to them, and he says, look, you guys are taking advantage of people who were in a bad, tough spot. What are you doing? They're your family. They're your friends. What do you think? And in verse 8 it says this, and he said to them, we, as far as we are able, have brought back our Jewish brothers who have been sold to the nations. Nehemiah is saying, we've come out of this already. We've already been here. We're past it. But you even sell your brothers that they may be sold to us. But listen to their response. Because here's what's incredibly interesting to me. As Nehemiah gets these power brokers in the same room and he confronts them, he begins to go, what do you guys think? What are you doing? Look at how these men respond in verse 8. They were silent and could not find a word to say. You could hear a pin drop. Nehemiah had just gotten the rich, the wealthy, the affluent people of Jerusalem together in the same room. They were in their suits. They were in their ties. They had their Rolex on. They were rocking their Louis Vuitton Python leather shoes. I mean, these guys were decked out. They were doing their thing, and they're sitting in this room, and this one man comes in against this panel of guys and says, what do you guys think? And they're speechless. It says in verse 9, so I said to them, the thing you are doing is not good. Ought you not walk in the fear of our God to prevent the taunts of the nations, our enemies? He's saying, guys, this does not look good for us. What do you think the people outside the wall are going to think? The people who have been opposing us, the people who are trying to tear the wall down again, what do you think? They're going to see this, and they're going to see this as weakness, and they're going to come at us. What are you doing? What do you think? And skip down to verse 11. Nehemiah says this, return to them this very day. He's telling these guys, here's what you're going to do. Return to them this very day, their fields, their vineyards, their olive orchards, and their houses, and the percentage of money, grain, wine, and oil that you have been extracting from them. And it says this in verse 12. Then they said, we will restore these and require nothing from them. We will do as you say. Excuse me? What? Nehemiah just gotten this group of people in this room, told them basically exactly what they were going to do. They were the guys, and they just go, yeah, we'll give it back. Like, it's that easy? Tragedy averted. Nehemiah wins again. This guy, like that. Like, how does this go so smoothly? It's so hard for me to imagine this group of people in this room together being confronted by the new guy in town, and they just say, yeah, you're right. We'll pay it back. But what a lot of us don't realize about Nehemiah is he had a little bit of a trump card in his back pocket. Nehemiah had a trump card, and it was larger than his authority that had come as governor, because Nehemiah was the governor of this area. That wasn't his trump card. Okay, that was cool. He was governor. He had some office. But what we find is Nehemiah had worked for years and years to fully earn this credibility that he has. And he has such incredible influence beyond his authority as governor that when he sits down with these guys, he throws the trump card and they say, yeah, you're right, Nehemiah, we'll give it all back. I don't know what we were thinking. What do we not know about Nehemiah? Like, is he some sort of Jason Bourne? Like, he's like, I will kill you. Like, I will go ninja on you right now if you don't give it back. And they're like, yeah, we're our bad, dog. Like, what does Nehemiah have? And it says this in verse 14. It says, moreover, this is Nehemiah speaking, from the time that I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of Artaxerxes the king, 12 years, neither I nor my brother ate the food allowance of the governor. Cool. Good job, Nehemiah. You didn't eat the food allowance. You're awesome. But here's why this is a big deal. Because as governor of this area, Nehemiah was entitled to coming to every person in that area and saying, I want you to give me a percentage of your food. I want you to give me a percentage of your wealth. I want you to give me a percentage of your land. I am due a percentage of everything that is yours. It's mine because I'm the governor. Give it to me. And Nehemiah says to these men, when I showed up here, I decided not to take everything I was entitled to. Matter of fact, I haven't taken anything. And here's the kicker in all this, and this is where the heart of today kind of lands for us. And this is what we're going to be talking about. It says this in verse 16. Nehemiah says, "Instead, I devoted myself to the work on the wall." In other words, he said, I came here because my heart broke. I came here because God put a burden deep in me for these people and for this city. And so I came here and I did something about it, and that's all I've done. And I didn't let the obstacles, I didn't let the money, I didn't let the opposition, I didn't let anything get in the way of what I came to do. And it would have been incredibly easy for a man like Nehemiah to roll into Jerusalem, how broken this city was. It would have been so easy for a man with his wealth, his power, with the king's backing, for him to roll into this place and see the weakness and see it as an opportunity to benefit himself. I'm going to buy up the land because they need the money. I'm going to buy it all up. I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to become more powerful. I'm going to use this for my own personal gain. But Nehemiah says, I didn't do any of that. It's been about the people, and it's been about Jerusalem. And when he sits in front of all these men, these powerful men, and he says, give it back, somehow or another, their hearts are transformed because they're looking at a guy whose words matched his actions. They're looking at this guy, Nehemiah, going, you're right. All you've been for is for the people. This whole time, all you've done is give of yourself, of your money, of your time, of your energy, of your effort, of everything. All you've done, and it's cost you relationally. It's cost you on every level of your life. Nehemiah, you're generous, and you're right. We ought to do the same. And it's because of Nehemiah's generous sacrifice for the betterment of others. It's because of this that Nehemiah gains this incredible, or this credibility with the people of Jerusalem. And some of you hear a story like this, and you think, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, okay, here it comes. Like, we ought to be more generous like Nehemiah. We ought to give more, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. Cool, can we move on? But that's not what this is all about. That's a component of this, but that's not the heart of what we're talking about today. Think about it this way for a moment. I think it's probably safe to say that every one of us in this room, unless you live in a cave, have seen one of those World Vision or Compassion videos, right? You've seen one of those videos where they showcase children or they showcase families who are in very tough situations, who the odds are stacked against them, and because of the help of people and organizations, life has gotten better. And you watch those videos, right? We've seen those types of things. And it's in large part due to the generosity of people or organizations that people's lives get better. And I'm not talking about the Sarah McLachlan, like, hey, you should care for this dog video with the sad music. That makes me angry. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people. And we watch these videos, and part of the emotion of these videos is what? Is we see these beautiful families, and we see these little kids, and you watch them, and if you don't tear up, you're heartless, because the whole intention is to tug at our hearts. The whole intention is to get you and I emotionally invested in what's going on. And so we watch these videos and our emotions rise up and the injustice of it all. And we just think we've got to do something. And it's at that point they say, hey, and you can help. And there's a monetary number that you can solve this. Get out your checkbook and you can help. Because they've tugged at the emotions of our heart. And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to show us a video. I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. But those videos, they tug at our emotions, and then we respond, don't we? And we watch these type of videos, and part of the emotion that we experience in these videos, whether you realize it or not, part of the emotion of these videos is they provide us, even for just a moment, clarity into our lives. There's a moment of clarity. They remind us of how truly blessed, fortunate, lucky, whatever word you want to use, we are. They remind us that we may not have everything we want. We may not have everything we think we need, but we have a lot more than most. And then you and I, we can come into a place like this, and we can be thinking about all kinds of things. I'm guilty of it. I sit where you're sitting sometimes, and I just start thinking about the things I'm going to go spend my money on, the things I'm going to do. Or you come into this place, and you're thinking about the car that you want to buy, and oh man, it's going to be so good. It's going to be a good car. I'm going to lease this new thing, and you're thinking about the color and the interior package and the trim package and the rims, and you're thinking about all these things and how cool it's going to be, and you're thinking about how you wish your wife would tell you to quit thinking about buying the car because you don't want to buy the car because you want to lease it, because then you can get a new car every 3 years, not every 15 years, and that's what you want to do. And so you're thinking about all these things, and then you come into this place, and you watch a video like that, or you hear a story, and you go, whoa. Whoa. And just for a moment, you have clarity. And we realize, I need to be more generous. I need to be more grateful. And then we leave here and we go home, and what happens? The further we get away from Sunday, the less significant the clarity, right? Monday, Tuesday, and the further we get, and all of a sudden, we've moved on. The human tendency, the human nature, quite honestly, is to not be generous. That's not our instinct, whether you realize that or not. Most of us don't wake up every morning. Probably most of us in this room, you didn't wake up and go, how can I serve others today? What can I do for other people today? I don't wake up like that. I wake up, start thinking about how can I get mine today? What am I going to do? My wife, she kind of wakes up that way and says, how can we serve others? And it makes me angry. I'm like, stop it. Like, I don't like it. I don't want to hear about it. And then she says, you should pray about it. And I go, yeah, you're right. And I go pray. But here's something I've realized. It's not just about the giving. It's not just about the generosity. You see, something I realized in my own life, and I'm just going to impose what I've learned in my life onto you and assume that you're like me, even though you're probably not. But here's what I've learned about me, is it's not a giving problem. It's not a generosity problem that I have. It's a gospel problem. That's what I've realized about me. And some of you go, what does that mean, a gospel problem? Like, what? I don't have a gospel problem. I work hard for my money. Like, I'm entitled to spend the money I earn. That's what I do. I'm entitled to take care of my family. I work hard. I can buy things. Like, cool. You're like, I don't have a gospel problem. You do. You should get off the stage. I should come teach. Cool, let's do that. But I want to unpack this a little bit for us. And as we do this, I want to look at 2 New Testament stories, because I truly believe that there is a gospel problem in our city. It's not a giving problem. It's not a generosity problem. It's a gospel problem. So I want to look at 2 New Testament stories to kind of bring some clarity into this for you and I. And the first story is about this young man. And he's quite possibly the Bible's most eligible bachelor, because Jesus wasn't available. And so there's this man, and he's the total package. He is socially affluent. He has an incredibly large financial profile. And there's this story, and it's in Mark chapter 10. It's called the story of the rich young ruler. Many of you have probably heard it. I'm going to summarize the story for us. Here's what happens. There's this young man, this guy, the rich young ruler, and he goes to Jesus. He says, "Teacher, what do I need to do to get eternal life? What do I need to do to get into heaven?" This guy, he's looking for Jesus to give him a list. Like, Jesus, just give me the list so I can check off the things. We'll go about our day. And as the conversation goes back and forth between this man and Jesus, this guy basically goes, "Yeah, Jesus, I'm a good dude. Like, what do I need to do?" And Jesus looks at this young man, and he says to him, "There's one thing." He says, "I want you to go, and I want you to sell all your possessions. I want you to give to the poor, and I want you to follow me." Which I don't know why Jesus said one thing, because that's way more than one thing. But Jesus says, "There's one thing." And it says at the end of the story, it says, but as he heard these words, he was saddened, and he went away grieving, for he was one who owned much property. What's happening in that story? What's Jesus doing? This young man comes to Jesus and says, "Jesus, what do I got to do to get in heaven?" And what's Jesus start to do? He's trying to get his attention. He's trying to say, wait, look at me. Quit focusing on all the stuff you have. Quit focusing on how affluent you are, how awesome you are socially. Look at me for a second. I'm going to tell you something, because here's what it is. And Jesus is trying to take his focus off the world around him and put it onto heaven, to put it on eternity, and says, here's what you need to do. Now, don't miss the point here. Because the point is not that you and I, church, go sell all your stuff and give it all to the poor. That's how you're generous. That's what we ought to do. That's the moral of the story. That's not the point here. So what's the point? Jesus says, sell your stuff and what? Come follow me. The propensity of the human heart is staggering at times to me because that's not what this kid had in mind. What he wanted was the to-do list. Jesus, show me the checklist. Show me the things I need to do to get into heaven. I'm going to do those things. And Jesus says, no. There's one thing. Jesus actually made it easier for him. Hey, there's not a list. There's good news. There's one thing for you to do. And the kid goes, I can't do that. And he walks away. Think back to Nehemiah for a moment. I said earlier, Nehemiah, he was at the king's right hand. He was affluent. He had money. He was well off socially. The rich young ruler and Nehemiah are actually comparable in their social status in what they had. Maybe the rich young ruler had a little bit more, but there's a comparison that can be made between these two men, Nehemiah and the rich young ruler. But look at how vastly different they handled the situation. And it goes back to that clarity that one of them had and the other one didn't. And then I ask the question to you and I, what if you and I left today? What if we went out into our jobs, into our families, into our communities, into our relationships, and we had that moment of clarity? Knowing, understanding, reminded that there is no way that we can earn our way to heaven, that you and I inherently are not good, but in Jesus we are made good. And it's only through Jesus. And I read that and I think about that and I go, okay, Jesus, wow. Like, I don't know about you, but I get so caught up in my life and who I am and what I do and my day-to-day and my routine that I forget how significantly the odds have been stacked in my favor by Jesus. I forget what he's done to me because I inherently know it, but I don't live my life always in a way that says, yeah, Jesus died for me and he loves me and he's cared for me. He stacked the chips in my favor. But when if you and I can go out of this place today with that moment of clarity, remembering, okay, you're right, Jesus. No longer will our decisions be guided by what we do or don't have in this world. But all of a sudden, our decisions, our actions, our efforts, our everything will begin to be guided by who we are in Jesus. And what this means is you and I will no longer look to ourselves to fulfill the deepest desires within us. We'll no longer look to ourselves or things around us to make us happy, to bring us joy, to make this life good. And I read this story in Nehemiah, and man, I said earlier, I love this story. I'm challenged by this story, but at the same time, I am repelled by this story. Because I'm not as generous as Nehemiah is. I look at this, I go, man, get out of here, Nehemiah. Like, you're not even a real person. Like, no one is that kind and generous and loving. If we're honest about it, our culture has hit this epidemic proportion of looking to things and stuff and people and everything else but Jesus to fulfill the deepest longings within our soul. That's the reality. We look to stuff to fulfill, and it's crazy. I do it. Look no farther for how crazy this really is. Look no farther than Black Friday for just a moment, okay? What happens on Black Friday? People go crazy. Hey, you can get on YouTube and you can watch Black Friday videos of people losing their minds and hurting other people and sprinting through stores and going nuts. Why? To save $50, because that's going to make all the difference in the world. To save the $100, right? Or think about garage sales for just a moment. How many like the garage sale? It's okay. I like the garage sale. You guys are like, is this a trick? I don't want to raise my hand. I like to garage sale, but here's the thing. I don't like having garage sales at my house. My wife and I, we've had 2 or 3 garage sales over the course of our marriage at our house. And every time what happens when we have the garage sale is no matter how clearly we communicate the time that the garage sale starts, no matter what, we could post it everywhere. We could post it like way more than you can ever imagine. We can post the start time. It never fails that an hour before the garage sale starts, people are in my driveway rummaging through the stuff I'm trying to put out. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like there's old ladies or old people, no offense to old people, but people who have handicap stickers. They have handicap stickers in their car and they're running around my driveway like they're in high school again. It's like, well, there's something happening. Like, well, how are you doing this? I love old people, by the way. I'm going to be old someday. Just pay it forward. But you look at these things and you go, what are people doing? They're running around my driveway. Why? So they can buy my garbage? Like, what is this all about? It's because whether we realize it or not, we believe if we can get that, if we can beat that person to that thing, if we can do this, we can do that, man, life is going to look up. It's trending up into the right. Things are good. And can I just say, that if Jesus is revolutionizing your life, when Jesus says that there's one thing to you, when he says, look, there's one thing, what will you do? How do you respond? I want to end with one final story from the New Testament, and this is going to be quick, but this is huge because I really think this kind of ties everything up nicely for you and I. There's this guy in the New Testament. He can be found in the book of Acts, and his name's Stephen. A lot of you have heard of Stephen before. Okay, Stephen is a good dude. He's a pastor. He cares for people. He's a part of the first church, which is a group of people not that much different than you and I who gathered together, who were following Jesus. And Stephen is helping lead the charge, and he's telling people, Jesus is the Messiah. Come follow him. And Stephen was a good dude, and he's doing this. But here's the problem. During this time, it was illegal for people to tell other people that Jesus was the Messiah. That was not okay to do. And so Stephen's going, telling people, Jesus is the Messiah. You got to come follow this guy. And then the court and the officials got word of that. And they're like, no, Stephen, come with me. Come with me. You can't do that. They arrest Stephen, and they place him before a court of priests. And in front of this court of priests, Stephen keeps going. He goes, guys, you're missing it. You've got to understand this. Jesus is the Messiah. And he starts telling these men in Acts 7, he starts telling them about Jacob and Joseph and Abraham and Israel and the wandering in the desert. And he's just telling all of these things. And he says, and guess what? All of that points to Jesus as the Messiah. And these guys go, wrong, Stephen, you are wrong. And they take Stephen outside of the city. And they're going to stone Stephen, and they're going to kill him for believing in Jesus. You can't do that, Stephen. Sorry, pal, come with me. You're out. And they take him outside the city, and they pick up rocks, and they're going to stone this man. They're going to throw rocks at him till he dies because he believed in God, because he believed Jesus was the Messiah. Stephen was a good man. And they start picking up rocks, and they start throwing them at Stephen. And they're chucking him at him. And he's blocking himself, trying to protect himself best he can. And as they keep throwing rocks at Stephen, he says, behold, I see in the heavens the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of God. And this makes them even madder because he just keeps going. They're like, don't you stop. And he just keeps going and going. And so they pick up more rocks and they bum rush Stephen. And they run up to him and he falls on the ground. And they throw more rocks at him. And they keep throwing. And there's this man who lays there. He's being killed by rocks being thrown at him, by guys who were wrong, guys who were not right. Stephen was right. And he lays there. And you want to talk about generosity. With his very last breath, this guy, Stephen, looks at the men around him who are killing him. And he prays to God, Lord, don't hold this one against them. Are you kidding me? I read that and I don't get it. His generosity is from another level. It's staggering to be literally being killed by men who are wrong, who are not right. You're right. And then Stephen prays the most generous prayer in the New Testament that wasn't said by Jesus himself. And he says, God, forgive them. Who's that sound like? Jesus. Jesus, with his second to last breath as he hung on the cross, what did he say? Father, forgive these men. They don't know what they're doing. And here's Stephen as he lies there dying, and his last words are for other people. Who does that? He's so satisfied in his own life, in his own soul. Stephen has that moment of clarity that I was talking about, that he understands above all that he has been loved, that he has been given the person of Jesus, and he says, man, God forgive him. And you and I, we can read that story and we can look at it and we go, yeah, Stephen's a good dude. But I don't know about you, but I read that story and I go, man, I am so far from that. I am so far from that type of generosity, from that type of love. I'm so focused on me, on getting mine, on what I need to do, that I completely miss what God wants to do through me. You see what we're talking about today? This isn't, you hear the word generosity in a church and you start thinking money. But this isn't a percentage. This isn't about your dollar bills. This is about you and I answering the question when Jesus says there's one thing. Will you follow me and will you love people? Would you trust me to be your provider, your supplier? Would you trust me to take care of your family, your business? Would you trust me and leverage what I've given you for the betterment of people, for the betterment of the city? You see, I read this and I get why Jesus said what he said. I get as Jesus hung on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. He was Jesus. I get it. But I don't understand what Stephen was doing. I don't understand how one human being can be this generous. You see, our city doesn't have a giving problem. Our city has a gospel problem. And who better to go out in our city and be generous and help show people the gospel than you and I? What an opportunity we have. What an opportunity that lies in front of you and I to get to go out and focus on others, to get to go out and be generous financially, generous with our time, generous with our efforts, generous with our forgiveness, generous relationally. What an opportunity you and I have. And the question is, will you be generous? Will you pray with me? Jesus, I am so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for your love. Jesus, I'm so grateful that you went to the cross. God, thank you that you are a perfect example of generosity. And God, I pray that as we sit today and as we consider Nehemiah and we consider Stephen, as we consider all of these things and what it looks like for us to be generous, God, I pray that you would now speak into our heart, speak about the relationship, about the forgiveness, about the financial opportunity, about whatever it is you've given us, God, whatever you put in front of us, show us now how we can be generous people, God, how we can be people who go out and we become the best version of who we are, not by improving ourselves, but by loving other people. God, we want to see our city above all. We want to see our city changed. We want to see our city begin to engage you, Jesus. And God, who better to go out and do that but us? So God, I pray for myself and I pray for my friends that as we leave here today, that we wouldn't feel a burden, but God, we would feel a joy and an excitement. Because God, through you, we have life. Through you, we have clarity. And out of that, God, we live. We love you, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen.